In this season, our third season, we'll be looking at one of China's very recent feats of engineering expertise, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. The story focuses on how the chief engineer saw his project not simply in terms of a construction challenge, but also saw its aesthetics and its spirit harking back to some of the great bridge-building feats of distant ancestors. Now, talking of ancient feats of engineering, we also have a story about the Great Wall and its construction at its far western end at Jiayuguan. Workers were faced with the challenge of moving massive blocks of stone from a quarry to the building site. Listen on to hear how they overcame the challenge. We have stories about the power of music during wartime, the 19-year bitter exile of a Han Dynasty official, and a traditional story about the virtues of self-control. All of that, and also a story about the Dragon Boat Festival. So join us, expand your vocabulary, rediscover inspiring Chinese stories, and learn how to share them with foreign friends and with the whole world. 在第三季中，我们有现代工程领域的伟大成就——港珠澳大桥的故事。这个故事讲述了总工程师不仅将他的项目看成一个建筑挑战，还通过回顾古代伟大建筑成就，将工程上升到审美和精神层面的高度。而谈到古代建筑成就，我们还有一个发生在长城最西端嘉峪关的故事。在长城建设时期，工人们面临一个巨大的挑战，那就是如何将巨大的石块从采石场运到施工现场。通过这个故事，我们可以学习到他们是如何克服这个困难。除此之外，我们还有战争时期用音乐鼓舞人民的故事，还有关于汉代官员19年艰苦流放经历的故事，还有关于自律美德的故事，还有关于传统节日，就是端午节的故事。还在等什么？赶紧把词汇量扩充起来，把中国故事的知识储备丰富起来，然后向全世界讲述这些精彩的中国故事吧。好的，那我们先来讲今天的故事。苏武牧羊的故事可以通过2个层面进行解读。从一个层面来看，这个故事讲的是苏武在面对可怕的逆境和困难的局面时，仍然保持对自己祖国的忠诚。从更深层次来看，这个故事讲的是与他人完全隔离的情况下，苏武仍能坚持原则和不改变他的初心。换句话说，有一个足够强大的人格和使命感，从而能够承受外部压力。虽然苏武经常被视为对国家忠诚的象征，但事实上，更准确地说，这是一种对文化价值观的忠诚。民族国家是相对近期的概念，可以追溯到17世纪的威斯特伐利亚条约。在中国，现代民族国家的概念可以追溯到辛亥革命。在汉朝，它则代表的是一个更广泛的一个意义，它代表的是一个完整的文化体系，一个整套价值观、伦理和道德。当然，这其中非常重要的汉文化是礼。匈奴不仅仅是另外一个民族而已，他们代表的是一套完全不同的文化规范和价值观。通过这种方式，不难发现，尽管苏武的忠诚与现代爱国主义有一些相似之处，却也显得更加深刻，因为它代表的是滋养你的文化和价值观的忠诚。苏武的形象是这样的，他孤独地与羊群相依为命，紧紧地攥住了他的文化的象征毛节。这个画面完全展示了一个人是如何坚守礼这个概念的。他维护着他 所拥有的价值观，即使没有人见证它。这是真正忠诚的关键，就是无论你是否被别人监督，你都要坚持自己的价值观，而不仅仅是做给别人看的。好的，现在我们要从这本书，就是我们用英语讲中国故事基础之一的苏武牧羊的英文版进行诵读。Su Wu was the prefect of Tai Commandery in the Han Dynasty, that is 206 BC to 220 AD. He was a high-minded gentleman of ancient China. In 100 BC, he was promoted to Zhong Lang Jiang, a senior officer in the early Han Dynasty. In the same year, a new Khan of the Xiongnu came to power, and Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty, eager to show friendship to the new Khan, sent Su Wu as his envoy, leading a retinue of over 100 persons to escort some detained Xiongnu envoys back to their country. But just as Su Wu was preparing to return home at the end of his mission, turmoil broke out among the upper ranks of the Xiongnu. The Han envoys somehow became implicated and were arrested as hostages in an attempt to subvert Han. At first, the Khan sent Wei Lu to persuade Su Wu to cooperate with him, even offering him a senior post with a high salary. But Su Wu adamantly refused. Seeing that persuasion didn't work, the Khan decided to try punishment. He ordered that Su Wu be confined in an open pit in the cold, snowy winter without food or water. The Khan thought that this treatment would make Su Wu submit. But as the days went by, Su Wu endured by drinking snow he melted on his own body and chewing on his sheepskin robe when he was hungry. When he was cold, he huddled in the warmest corner of the pit. After some time, the Khan realized that Su Wu, despite being reduced to skin and bones, wrapped in rags, showed not the slightest sign of submitting. The Khan's respect for Su Wu increased. He didn't have the heart to put him to death, nor was he willing to send him back to his own country. So he said to Su Wu, "Since you refuse to submit, I'm going to send you to tend sheep. When those sheep, all rams, give birth to lambs, then I will send you back to Han." Su Wu was banished to the shore of Lake Baikal in what is now Siberia. The area was sparsely inhabited and bone-piercingly cold. For companions, Su Wu had only his token staff as a Han Dynasty envoy and a flock of rams. Every day, Su Wu used his token staff to marshal the rams and thought constantly of his native land. When he was thirsty, he chewed a handful of snow. When he was hungry, he dug up wild roots from the ground. And when he was cold, he huddled next to the sheep. In this way, day after day and year after year, he tended the sheep until the oxtail on his token staff had completely fallen off and his beard and hair had turned white. By this time, both the Khan, who had exiled Su Wu, and Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty had died. Emperor Wu had been succeeded by Emperor Zhao. In 85 BC, internal strife broke out among the Xiongnu, and the new Khan did not have enough troops to ward off Han incursions. So he dispatched an envoy to seek peace. At the same time, Emperor Zhao sent an envoy to the Xiongnu to demand the return of Su Wu, Chang Hui, and the other members of his entourage. The Khan, however, claimed that Su Wu had died. When another Han envoy arrived, Chang Hui bribed some of the Khan's underlings and got to meet him. Learning the truth, the envoy was incensed at the Khan and said the following to him: "Out hunting one day, our emperor brought down a large goose. Tied around one of its legs was a scrap of silk with a message in Su Wu's own hand. He said that he was tending sheep by Lake Baikal. How dare you try to deceive our emperor?" Khan turned pale and exclaimed, "Suwul's loyalty and righteousness moved even a wild bird." He immediately apologized to the emperor and promised to send Suwul back to Han. When Suwul set out on his mission, he had over 100 envoy members with him, but only a few survived to accompany him on his homeward journey. In 81 BC, Suwul finally arrived back in Chang'an. The local people poured into the streets to welcome him back, praising him as an incorruptible official. Cherished in Suwul's heart was the following sentiment: since we only have one life, naturally we want to live it in comfort and undisturbed. However, the commission I bore was a command to me not to surrender. The commission represented his reverence for the emperor as well as his own duty, both of which he steadfastly guarded. The moral of the story. Suwul spent 19 years tending sheep in the far north because from the beginning to the very end he refused to submit to the Xiongnu. His love for his country has been lauded throughout the ages. Suwul personifies patriotic loyalty and devotion to duty. Okay, now that you've heard me recite the story, we'll take a look at some recitation skills. 好的，现在你们已经听完我把这个故事朗诵了，我们现在来练习一些朗诵技巧。首先我们读这一段。Suwul was banished to the shore of Lake Baikal in what is now Siberia. The area was sparsely inhabited and bone-piercingly cold. For companions, Suwul had only his token staff as a Han Dynasty envoy and a flock of rams. Every day, Suwul used his token staff to marshal the rams and thought constantly of his native land. When he was thirsty, he chewed a handful of snow. When he was hungry, he dug up wild roots from the ground. And when he was cold, he huddled next to his sheep. In this way, day after day and year after year, he tended the sheep until the oxtail on his token staff had completely fallen off and his beard and hair had turned white. By this time, both the Khan who had exiled Suwul and the Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty had died. Emperor Wu had been succeeded by Emperor Zhao. In this passage, we need to convey the harshness and bitterness of the environment. Clearly, when we use phrases like sparsely inhabited and bone-piercingly cold, we not only need to emphasize them, but we also need to emphasize them in such a way as to convey the sense of the harshness of the environment, particularly that vivid term, bone-piercingly cold. Let's practice them. 在这个段落，我们需要展示环境的恶劣艰苦。我们读到 sparsely inhabited 和 bone-piercingly cold 的时候，我们不只要突出这些短语，我们也要把环境的恶劣艰苦的感觉表现出来，特别是在这个生动的词组 bone-piercingly cold。好，咱们来练一练吧。Sparsely inhabited, bone-piercingly cold. In a similar way, when we talk about how he chewed a handful of snow and dug up roots, we need to convey how tough his life was with our voice. 同样，当我们读到 chewed a handful of snow, dug up roots 的时候，我们也需要通过声音来强调他的生活有多么不易。At the same time, when we refer to his spirit in phrases like, he thought constantly of his native land, we need to use a much more strong and energetic tone of voice. 同时，当我们读到这些体现他的精神的内容，像 he thought constantly of his native land, 我们需要用一种更加铿锵有力的处理方式。Okay, let's listen to the whole passage again. 好的，我们现在再来听一听整个段落。Suwul was banished to the shore of Lake Baikal in what is now Siberia. The area was sparsely inhabited and bone-piercingly cold. For companions, Suwul had only his token staff as a Han Dynasty envoy and a flock of rams. Every day, Suwul used his token staff to marshal the rams and thought constantly of his native land. When he was thirsty, he chewed a handful of snow. When he was hungry, he dug up wild roots from the ground. And when he was cold, he huddled next to the sheep. In this way, day after day and year after year, he tended the sheep until the oxtail on his token staff had completely fallen off and his beard and hair had turned white. By this time, both the Khan who had expelled Suwu and Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty had died. Emperor Wu had been succeeded by Emperor Zhao. 好的，那么今天的课我们就差不多就讲到这里了。Okay, today's class is almost over, but before I go, I just want to remind everyone to practice reciting that paragraph and don't just memorize the words. Practice how I used language, how I emphasized words, how I tried to express the atmosphere of that cold and desolate scene. Okay, but that's it from me for now. Bye-bye.